Hey everyone, and welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got breaking news coming out from the Baltic nations that authorities are drafting up plans to prepare for mass evacuations of civilians to get ready for a major Russian invasion that's been warned about by many European leaders. Let's talk about this new story here on your screen. Baltic countries create plans for mass evacuations amid Russian threat. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are preparing plans for a mass evacuation of citizens in the event of an alleged possible attack by Russia on the Baltic states. So, these three nations we've been talking a lot about recently, we know that they are getting ready for a possible Russian attack in the future. Many NATO member states have been warning that Russia, if they do launch an attack onto NATO, it's most likely going to be one of these Baltic nations, if not all of them at the same time. So, we're going to talk more about this because they're getting ready right now with these mass evacuations of citizens. Apparently, they're doing rehearsals or preparing to do rehearsals to get people evacuated out of the country or at least away from the front lines so that way their military can move in if they're invaded by Russia. So, we're going to talk about this. We'll hop on over to a mainstream news report from Liga.net. It says Baltic states prepare mass evacuation in case of Russian attack. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are developing algorithms for action in the event of a Russian attack or escalation at the borders. This is coming out today on October 10th, 2025. It says Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, which have long expressed concerns to other NATO countries about possible Russian aggression, are preparing for a Russian attack, escalation on the borders, and the possible evacuation of hundreds of thousands of people. This was reported by Reuters. Three Baltic states are concerned about Russia's huge military spending since its full scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And despite Russia's claim that it has no plans to attack NATO, the Baltic states have doubled their defense spending since Russia's great war against Ukraine, which came after Moscow repeatedly denied any such plan. Threats can be different, says Renatas Pozela, head of the Lithuanian Fire Service. So, yeah, we know that Russia is ramping up their defense spending. They've been doing this for a long time now. They're producing all kinds of different weaponry. Russia has no plans to slow this down. We see what's happening inside of Ukraine. They continue the fighting over there. They do not want a peaceful settlement to that war. They want to continue bombing Ukraine until Ukraine no longer exists. And what happens if Russia wants to continue after Ukraine? That's again what's been warned by many European leaders that the Russians may attack the Baltic nations. So you can see clearly with this report today, they are getting ready to start evacuating citizens if they get attacked. A little bit more information here says we may see a powerful army along the Baltic borders with the obvious goal of taking over all three countries in 3 days or a week, Bozella said. Now, that's exactly what the Russians wanted to do inside of Ukraine. Wonder if they would be able to achieve that with the Baltic nations. I mean, obviously, that would be NATO right there, right? We've heard from NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte that if Russia attacks any NATO nation, there will be a devastating response coming from NATO. So I would think Russia would take on massive losses trying to attack a NATO member, even some of these Baltic nations. Sabotage of communications or transportation links, massive influx of migrants, civil unrest among Russian speaking minorities, or fake news that will lead to massive flight. These scenarios are being discussed in local media and beyond. We talk about it every month, every week, at work, everywhere, said 31-year-old Arminas Raudis, volunteer playing the role of an evacuee in this week's drills in Lithuania. So you see, Lithuania is already doing drills right now, getting ready for evacuees. In Kaunas, 300,000 people are planned to be accommodated in schools, universities, Catholic churches, and the Zalgiris area arena, where Robbie Williams and Roger Waters recently performed. Other cities will be no exception. Those who flee by car will be directed to secondary roads to clear the main roads for the arriving army. A map showing the cities with shelters has been prepared. We have done our homework. This is a very encouraging signal to our society that we are ready and planning, said Lithuanian Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys. Estonia plans to relocate about 10% of its population out of 1.4 million. So that's possibly over 100,000 people that could be evacuated or relocated in some of its areas of eastern Estonia. Also says Latvia up to a third of its citizens. Okay, so we're talking hundreds of thousands of evacuees that would be taking place here. Finally, it says Finland said that Russia could use a shadow fleet to attack the Baltic states. Now, I want to briefly show you that story because this information came out. It was just the other day. I was going to do a video on it, but I decided not to. It didn't seem like something that was super urgent that I wanted you guys to be aware of, but I do want to briefly show you this because I think it kind of ties into the whole Baltics and all that. This is about Finland, which is just a little bit north of the Baltic nations. This is also on Liga.net. Finland says Russia may use a shadow fleet to attack the Baltics. The Finnish foreign minister does not rule out that Russia could have tried to use the tanker fleet as it operates in the shadows. So the date here was October 8th, just 2 days ago. And it says right here, Finland sees no signs that Russia plans to end its war against Ukraine. In addition, Moscow may use the so-called shadow tanker fleet for attacks in the Baltic region. Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen, if I'm saying her name right, told TVP World. She was asked whether drones could be launched from Russian ships linked to the shadow fleet. The Finnish minister replied that an investigation was underway, but that such a moment could not be ruled out. They may have been trying to do this because they have a shadow navy that is actually operating in the shadows. The free world has to be strong enough to tell them that this can't happen anymore, Valtonen said. So yeah, she was warning that apparently Russia may use their shadow fleet to attack the Baltic nations, probably launching drones or something like that. There's been a lot of reports that Russia might be deploying drones over Europe using the shadow fleet of oil tankers that they have that transports oil illegally around the world. We've been talking about these drones over like Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Germany. Drone flights shutting down airports and over military sites and things like that. That apparently Russia could use those same shadow fleets to launch an attack onto the Baltic. So imagine how crazy things could get over there if they were to utilize these shadow tankers as well at the same time, along with a ground invasion. So real quick, I want to pull something up. I've got a map to show you guys so you can see what we're talking about with these Baltic nations visually instead of me just talking about it. Here's a report from Slava. It just says, don't panic. The Baltic countries are preparing for war with Russia. Secret mass evacuation exercises are currently underway in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, according to Reuters. So here's a little picture coming out from the Times of Ukraine. That's going to be a mainstream news outlet over there. And kind of showing these different Baltic nations, right? We got Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. And this map kind of talks about, if there were to be an attack onto the Baltic nations, there'd be an attack from Kaliningrad, which is obviously controlled by Russia, in between Poland and Lithuania. Also an attack out of Belarus into Lithuania, and then even from the mainland of Russia, the Russians could attack into Latvia and Estonia. So you could imagine that a lot of these people that are living on the eastern side of these nations, maybe even the southern side of Lithuania here as well, would have to be evacuated because that would be a complete war zone there, right? So they would most likely have to be evacuated to the western sides of these nations. And I was thinking also, like, let's say some of these nations started to fall for some reason, they'd probably have to evacuate people on ships and get them out of here because they're kind of, locked here right by the sea. They'd have to get them on ships and probably get them over to maybe Sweden or possibly Poland or something like that. Maybe these ships could come under attack from Kaliningrad, who knows? So, this is definitely a dangerous situation for all these people that'd be kind of trapped here in these Baltic nations if they come under attack. So I just wanted to show you this map so you can kind of visually see what's happening here and why these nations are preparing for a possible evacuation of potentially hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of civilians over here in case we see an attack from Russia. So it looks like the Baltic countries are getting ready. They believe there is a possibility that Russia will attack them in the future. So we can see they're starting to get these plans drafted up and prepare rehearsals of major evacuations of civilians. So guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in for this update. Let me know what you think about all these details down below in the comment section. That's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. With that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.